Captain Zarath flexed his 4 muscular arms as he reviewed the intelligence reports from his command chair. The bridge of the Valtorian dreadnought hummed with activity as his crew prepared for what would be the easiest conquest in their empire's history. On the main display, a small blue and green planet rotated slowly, completely unaware of the doom approaching from the void. "Sir, we've completed our scanning of the 3rd planet," announced Lieutenant Krex, his scaled fingers dancing across the tactical console. "The inhabitants call themselves humans, and honestly, I'm not sure why we're even bothering with a full invasion force." Zarath's mandibles clicked in amusement. The Valtorian Empire had conquered over 300 worlds in the past millennium, each one adding to their vast collection of slave races. Some species had put up impressive fights. The crystalline Zephirites had energy weapons that could melt through battle armor. The insectoid hive minds coordinated attacks with mathematical precision. The gaseous ethereals could phase through solid matter. But humans? The reports painted a picture of laughable weakness. "Read me their specifications again, Lieutenant. I want to savor this." Krex's data pad glowed as he accessed the files. Average height, 1.7 meters. Average weight, 70 kilograms. Lifespan, barely 80 rotations around their star. No natural armor, no claws, no venomous secretions, no telepathic abilities. Their bones break easily. Their skin tears from minor impacts, and they require constant nourishment and rest to function. The bridge crew erupted in laughter. Even the stoic Valtorian warriors couldn't contain their mirth at such pathetic biological limitations. "It gets worse," Krex continued, wiping tears from his compound eyes. "They're divided into hundreds of different factions. They actually fight amongst themselves. Wars, territorial disputes, resource conflicts. They can't even unite their own species, let alone mount a defense against a superior force." Commander Thex, Zarath's second-in-command, shook his massive head. "Captain, perhaps we should just send a single corvette. A full battle fleet seems excessive for such primitive creatures." Zarath considered this. His fleet consisted of 40 dreadnoughts, each one capable of glassing a continent. Supporting them were hundreds of cruisers, destroyers, and fighter squadrons. The accumulated firepower could reduce the human homeworld to cosmic dust within hours. But the Emperor had been specific in his orders. This would be a demonstration of Valtorian might, broadcast across the galaxy to discourage any thoughts of rebellion among their existing slave worlds. Every species would witness the swift, brutal efficiency with which the Empire dealt with new acquisitions. "No," he decided. "We follow the Emperor's commands. Full orbital bombardment of their major population centers, followed by ground assault to secure survivors for the labor camps. Make it spectacular." As the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, their sensors immediately began cataloging Earth's defenses. What they found was almost insulting. The humans had managed to place a few primitive space stations in orbit around their planet and had scattered some basic satellites for communication and observation. Their most advanced weapons were crude missiles powered by chemical rockets. "Sir," reported the sensor operator, barely suppressing another laugh, "they appear to have noticed our arrival. We're detecting frantic communications traffic between their nations. Some of their governments are attempting to contact us." "Put it through," Zarath ordered. He was curious to hear what these weaklings might say in their final moments. The main screen flickered to life, showing a collection of human faces from what appeared to be their governing bodies. They looked exactly as pathetic as the intelligence report suggested. Soft pink skin, small, inefficient eyes. No natural weaponry visible anywhere on their frames. "Unknown vessels," spoke one of the humans, an elderly male with gray fur growing from his scalp. "This is Secretary General Chen of the United Nations of Earth. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations with your civilization." The bridge fell silent for a moment before exploding in fresh laughter. Even hardened veterans who had seen countless worlds burn couldn't believe the audacity of these creatures. Diplomatic relations? Zarath's voice boomed across the communication channel. You misunderstand the situation, humans. I am Captain Zarath of the Valtorian Empire. You have exactly 1 solar hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why your species is about to join the ranks of our workforce. The human's face went pale, but he maintained his composure. Captain, we understand you represent a more advanced civilization, but surely we can find common ground. Earth has many resources to offer in trade. Our scientists have made remarkable discoveries that might interest your people. Your scientists? Krex had patched into the communication channel and couldn't resist joining the conversation. Your most advanced technology burns chemical fuel to escape your planet's gravity well. Our children build more sophisticated devices as toys. Secretary General Chen tried a different approach. What about our cultural achievements? Art, music, literature. Surely knowledge and creativity have value beyond material resources. This comment sparked the loudest laughter yet. Valtorian culture was built on conquest and dominance. Beauty was found in the precise choreography of orbital bombardments and the elegant mathematics of empire building. What could these fragile creatures possibly offer in terms of culture? You have 47 minutes remaining, Zarath announced before cutting the transmission. As the fleet moved into attack formation, reports continued streaming in from reconnaissance drones scouting the planet's surface. The humans had indeed mobilized their militaries, such as they were. Aircraft that couldn't even reach orbit buzzed around like insects. Ground-based weapons that couldn't penetrate the shields of a single Valtorian fighter were being moved into position. Most amusing of all, they seemed to be evacuating their population centers, as if hiding in holes would save them from weapons capable of cracking tectonic plates. Sir, the tactical officer announced, we're detecting some unusual activity on the planet's surface. The humans appear to be... Singing? Singing? Yes, sir. Large gatherings in their major cities. They're holding hands and producing coordinated vocalizations. Our xenolinguists think it might be some sort of religious ritual. Zarath shrugged. Many species turn to their deities when faced with extinction. It changed nothing. As the countdown reached its final minutes, Zarath opened a fleet-wide channel. Warriors of the Empire, today we add another world to our domain. Let this serve as a reminder to any who would oppose Valtorian supremacy. Begin orbital bombardment on my command. The weapon arrays of 40 dreadnoughts began charging, their energy signatures creating aurora effects in Earth's upper atmosphere. Below, the humans had gone silent. Their pitiful fleets had retreated to defensive positions around their homeworld, clearly understanding they were hopelessly outmatched. All weapons charged and ready, Captain. Zarath raised his primary arm, savoring the moment. In seconds, human civilization would become nothing more than a cautionary tale told in the slave quarters of distant worlds. Fire. The first salvo lit up the darkness of space as coherent energy beams lanced toward Earth's surface. They struck the planet's magnetic field and atmosphere, creating spectacular light shows as they burned through toward their targets. The major cities of Earth, New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, were about to become craters in the planet's surface. But something was wrong. Sir, the sensor operator called out, confusion evident in his voice. The beams are dispersing? On the tactical display, the energy weapons that should have been carving through stone and steel were instead spreading out like water hitting a curved surface. Instead of concentrated destruction, the beams were being deflected harmlessly into space. Impossible, Thex muttered. No planetary shield technology could deflect that much concentrated energy. Run full-spectrum analysis, Zarath ordered, his amusement rapidly turning to concern. Find out what's happening. The science officer's tentacles worked frantically over his instruments. "Captain, I'm reading massive electromagnetic fluctuations around the planet. The humans appear to have generated some kind of resonance field using their planet's own magnetic structure." "That's theoretically impossible," Krex protested. "The precision required to manipulate planetary magnetic fields would require computational power beyond anything these primitives could possess." "And yet," the science officer continued, "our weapons are being deflected by their planet's own natural defenses, somehow enhanced and directed by human technology." Zarath stared at the main display as his supposedly overwhelming first strike accomplished nothing more than an impressive light show. How had intelligence failed so catastrophically? How had these weak, divided creatures developed defensive capabilities that their best scientists claimed were impossible? "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving another transmission from Earth." Secretary General Chen's face appeared on screen again, but his expression had changed. Gone was the nervous diplomat. In his place stood someone who looked almost disappointed. "Captain Zarath," Chen began, his voice carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. "We gave you a chance to talk. We offered you trade, knowledge, even friendship. But you chose violence against innocent people. Your planetary defenses won't hold forever, human," Zarath snarled. "We have weapons you can't even comprehend." "Actually," Chen replied calmly, "we comprehend your weapons quite well. We've been watching species like yours for longer than you might think. The energy signatures, the tactical formations, the predictable strategies. You're not the first to make the mistake of judging us by our appearance." A chill ran down Zarath's spine. Something in the human's tone suggested knowledge far beyond what their intelligence reports had indicated. "You see, Captain," Chen continued, "humans have a saying, 'Don't judge a book by its cover.' You looked at our biology and saw weakness. You looked at our divisions and saw chaos. You looked at our technology and the first human weapons to fire weren't the massive installations emerging from Luna. Instead, every satellite in Earth's orbital space suddenly transformed. What the Valtorians had dismissed as primitive communication devices revealed their true nature as coordinated defense nodes. Thousands of small, seemingly insignificant objects began emitting focused electromagnetic pulses that struck the Valtorian fleet with surgical precision. "Shields holding," reported the tactical officer, though his voice carried less confidence than before. "But sir, these aren't random attacks. They're targeting our weapon system specifically." Captain Zarath watched in growing alarm as his dreadnought's primary cannons began shutting down one by one. The human satellites weren't trying to destroy his ships. They were systematically disabling their offensive capabilities with a precision that spoke of intimate knowledge of Valtorian technology. "How is this possible?" Commander Thex demanded. "Our shield frequencies are classified at the highest levels. No alien species has ever successfully interfaced with Valtorian systems." On the main screen, Secretary General Chen smiled sadly. "Commander, you're thinking too small. We didn't hack your systems, we helped design them." The bridge fell silent except for the increasingly frantic beeping of system alerts. Through the viewports, they could see more human installations revealing themselves throughout the solar system. Structures that had been disguised as asteroids were unfolding into massive shipyards. Gas mining platforms around Jupiter were rotating to reveal weapon arrays that dwarfed anything in the Valtorian fleet. "Impossible," Zarath whispered. "Our intelligence showed you have barely achieved interplanetary travel. Your technology is centuries behind ours." "Your intelligence was correct about our public technology," Chen acknowledged. "What your spies didn't realize is that humans learned long ago to keep our most important capabilities hidden. We've been spacefaring for longer than your empire has existed, Captain. We just learned early to stay quiet about it." A new voice joined the communication from Earth. a woman with graying hair and eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "Captain Zarath, I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez, Director of the Solar Defense Initiative. Since you seem confused about our capabilities, let me provide some clarification." The main display shifted to show a detailed schematic of human space infrastructure. It was staggering. Bases throughout the solar system connected by transport networks that could move resources and personnel faster than anything in Valtorian space. Manufacturing facilities that could produce fleets in a fraction of the time required by traditional shipyards. And defensive installations that had apparently been watching and analyzing every ship that had ever approached Earth. "You see," Dr. Martinez continued, "humans have a peculiar trait. When we encounter something that could potentially threaten us, we don't just prepare for that specific threat. We prepare for every possible variation of that threat, and then we prepare for threats we haven't even imagined yet. We've been observing galactic civilization for over 2,000 years, another voice added, a man identifying himself as Admiral Jackson of the Solar Fleet. We've watched the rise and fall of a dozen empires like yours. We've studied their tactics, their technologies, their weaknesses, and we've been preparing. The tactical display showed Valtorian fleet formations beginning to break apart as more and more of their weapon systems were disabled by precisely targeted electromagnetic attacks. But it wasn't just their weapons failing. Navigation systems were being corrupted, communications were being jammed, and somehow the humans were even interfering with life support systems on the outer ships. "This is Admiral Jackson again. I need you to understand something, Captain. Earth isn't defenseless because we're primitive. Earth appears defenseless because we learned that the best way to avoid galactic conflicts is to look like we're not worth the effort. But when someone forces our hand..." From the dark side of Luna, something enormous began to emerge. At first it looked like another weapons platform, but as it cleared the moon's shadow, the Valtorians realized they were looking at a ship. A human ship that was larger than their entire invasion fleet combined. "Dear gods," breathed Lieutenant Krex, "that thing is the size of a small moon." "Actually," Dr. Martinez's voice carried a note of pride, "the USSS Defiance is exactly 347 kilometers in diameter. We built her in the asteroid belt over the past century, using techniques that your Empire's scientists insisted were theoretically impossible. The massive vessel didn't immediately attack. Instead, it simply positioned itself between Earth and the Valtorian fleet, its presence serving as an unmistakable statement. As it moved, it was joined by smaller ships emerging from hidden bases throughout the solar system. Hundreds of vessels that looked nothing like human technology as the Valtorians understood it. "How many of you are there?" Zarath asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "On Earth? About 8 billion, Chen replied. "But you're asking the wrong question, Captain. You should be asking how many of us there are throughout the galaxy." New contacts began appearing on long-range sensors. Ships were decloaking near the edge of the solar system, but these weren't emerging from hidden bases. They were arriving from deep space, responding to some kind of communication the Valtorians hadn't detected. "We told you that humans were divided into many factions." Admiral Jackson's voice carried what might have been amusement. "What we didn't mention is that some of those factions left Earth a long time ago. Some headed for other star systems. Others chose to live in space permanently. A few even joined other civilizations as observers or advisors. The implications hit the Valtorian command crew like a physical blow. If humans had been spacefaring for millennia, if they had spread throughout the galaxy, if they had been watching and learning. Your empire has been infiltrated from the beginning. Dr. Martinez confirmed their worst fears. Human advisors have been present at nearly every major technological development in Valtorian history. We helped design your faster-than-light drives. We suggested improvements to your weapon systems. We even recommended specific tactical doctrines that we knew would be effective against the threats you faced at the time. And ineffective against us, Admiral Jackson added grimly. The massive human dreadnought, the Defiance, began broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously, but it wasn't communicating with the Valtorians. It was sending signals throughout the galaxy, and the responses were immediate. Star systems throughout Valtorian space began reporting unusual activity. Ships appearing in supposedly secure sectors, defensive installations activating on worlds that weren't supposed to have advanced technology. "How long?" Zarath asked, his voice hollow. "How long have you been among us?" "Since before your empire began," Chen replied softly. "Humans have a saying, Captain. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. We've never considered the Valtorians our enemies, but we learned early that it's important to understand those with the power to threaten others." The tactical display was now showing the true scope of human presence throughout the galaxy, hidden bases in nebulae that the Valtorians had thought were uninhabitable, mining operations in asteroid fields that appeared to be natural, even stations in deep space that looked like derelict ships but were actually observation posts. "We gave you a choice," Admiral Jackson's voice hardened. "We offered you trade, diplomacy, peaceful coexistence. Your response was to threaten genocide against innocent civilians. That's not something we can ignore." "What do you want?" Zarath asked. For the first time in his career, he was genuinely afraid. The Valtorian Empire had built its power on being the strongest force in any conflict. But they weren't facing a primitive species defending their homeworld. They were facing a galactic civilization that had been preparing for this exact scenario for longer than their empire had existed. "We want you to leave," Chen said simply. "We want you to return to your space and never threaten Earth again. But more than that, we want you to take a message back to your Emperor." The communication screen split to show multiple human faces, representatives from colonies throughout the galaxy, commanders of fleets that had been hidden for centuries, leaders of human communities that had been secretly living among other species. "Tell your Emperor," Dr. Martinez began, "that the galaxy is bigger than he imagines. Tell him that there are forces at work that his intelligence services have never detected. Tell him that humanity values peace and cooperation, but we're prepared to defend those values if necessary. And tell him," Admiral Jackson's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty, "that if he chooses to continue building his empire through conquest and slavery, he'll find that many of the species he's enslaved have human advisors who've been helping them prepare for liberation." Throughout the Valtorian fleet, more systems began failing. Not catastrophically, not violently, but with the precise control that came from intimate knowledge of their design and operation. Ships were losing propulsion, communication systems were being selectively jammed, and weapons that tried to target human installations simply refused to fire. "You're free to leave," Chen said as human ships began forming escort formations around the disabled Valtorian vessels. "We'll even repair your systems once you're outside the solar system, as a gesture of goodwill. But Captain Zarath, I need you to understand something." The screen focused on the Secretary General's face, and for the first time, the Valtorians could see the steel beneath his diplomatic demeanor. "Humanity spent thousands of years learning to survive in a universe that seemed determined to kill us. We faced ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have ended most species. We learned to adapt, to cooperate, to plan for threats we couldn't even imagine yet. And when we finally reached the stars, we discovered that the universe was full of species like yours. Powerful, aggressive, and convinced that might makes right. So we made a choice," Dr. Martinez continued. "We could compete directly, building bigger fleets and deadlier weapons until the galaxy burned. Or we could be smarter. We could learn everything there was to know about every threat we might face, and then prepare countermeasures that would make direct conflict unnecessary. What you encountered today, Admiral Jackson concluded, wasn't human military might. It was human preparation meeting human patience. We've been ready for this conversation for longer than your empire has existed. The only question now is whether your emperor is wise enough to listen to the message you're going to deliver. The last of the Valtorian weapons went offline as human technical teams, working from hidden installations throughout the solar system, completed their systematic disabling of the invasion fleet. 40 dreadnoughts and the 3 months after the failed invasion of Earth, Emperor HFY stood in his private chambers aboard the Imperial flagship, staring at the holographic display that showed the current state of his crumbling empire. Red indicators marked worlds where slave populations had suddenly risen in coordinated rebellions. Yellow warnings highlighted systems where his fleets reported mysterious technical failures. Green dots indicated the few remaining loyal territories that hadn't yet been touched by what his intelligence services had started calling the human problem. The door chimed, and Captain Zarath entered, his once proud bearing now marked by the weight of repeated failures. In the months since his return from Earth, he had become the Emperor's primary liaison for dealing with the human crisis, mainly because he was one of the few military leaders who had actually encountered them and survived to report back. "Your Majesty," Zarath said with a formal bow that couldn't quite hide his exhaustion. "I have the latest reports from the Outer Rim territories." "More bad news, I assume?" HFY turned from the holo-display, his 4 eyes focusing on his captain with an intensity that had made stronger beings tremble. But Zarath had seen human technology turn 40 dreadnoughts into floating scrap metal with casual efficiency. Imperial displeasure seemed almost quaint by comparison. "The rebellion on Kethmar has succeeded," Zarath reported. "The entire garrison surrendered without firing a shot. According to the communications we intercepted, the Kethmari rebels had received detailed intelligence about our defensive positions, supply lines, and patrol schedules. Intelligence that could only have come from someone with access to Imperial military databases." "Human advisors," the Emperor muttered. It wasn't a question anymore. Every successful rebellion, every technical failure, every inexplicable intelligence leak pointed to the same conclusion. The humans hadn't just been observing galactic civilization. They had been actively preparing for this moment for longer than anyone had imagined. "There's more, Your Majesty." Zarath activated his own holographic display, showing a star map of the entire empire. "We've confirmed human presence in 47 systems previously thought to be secure. Not just observation posts, full infrastructure, shipyards, research facilities, military bases. Some of them have been operating for over 500 years. The Emperor studied the map with growing dread. The green dots indicating loyal systems were scattered like islands in a sea of red and yellow warnings. Worse, many of the green systems were only loyal because they hadn't yet been contacted by human liberation forces. "What about our response fleets?" HFY asked. "Surely we can mount some kind of counterattack." Zarath's mandibles clicked nervously. "Admiral Kretos took the 5th Battle Group to retake the Alderan system last week. According to his final transmission, they encountered a single human vessel, a research ship according to its identification codes. When he moved to attack, every ship in his fleet simultaneously lost navigation, weapons, and communication systems. They're currently drifting in deep space, awaiting rescue." "A research ship defeated an entire battle group?" "It didn't attack them, Your Majesty. It just turned them off, like deactivating a child's toy." Zarath paused, clearly struggling with the implications of his own report. The humans could have destroyed them easily. Instead, they sent repair drones to restore life support and transmitted detailed instructions for fixing their engines. Admiral Kretos described it as the most humiliating defeat in Imperial history. Emperor HFY turned back to the holographic display of his empire, watching as more systems shifted from green to yellow as real-time updates arrived from throughout his territories. The Valtorian Empire, which had dominated this region of the galaxy for over a millennium, was disintegrating in a matter of months. And their enemies weren't even fighting them. They were simply revealing that the Empire had never been as powerful as it believed. "Your Majesty," Zarath continued hesitantly, "we've received another communication from Earth, the same Secretary General Chen who spoke to us during the invasion. What do they want now? Another demonstration of our helplessness?" "Actually, sir, they're offering to negotiate." Vex-High's head snapped around to stare at his captain. "Negotiate? After systematically dismantling our empire? They say they never intended to destroy us, only to limit our expansion. According to their message, they're willing to discuss terms for coexistence." The word felt strange in the Emperor's mouth as he repeated it. Coexistence. The Valtorian Empire had built its power on conquest and domination. The concept of negotiating with equals was so foreign it barely made sense. What are their terms? They want to meet at neutral territory, a space station in the Deneb system that apparently has been run by humans for the past 3 centuries, though it appeared in our charts as a trading post operated by the Altarian Consortium. Of course it did. The Emperor was beginning to understand that human deception ran deeper than anyone had suspected. How many facilities throughout the galaxy were actually human operations disguised as something else? "There's something else, Your Majesty." Zarath activated another display showing personnel files. Valtorian citizens, many of them in positions of significant authority throughout the Empire. These are Imperial citizens who have been identified as having human ancestry. Not recent contacts, but bloodlines that go back centuries. The implications hit the Emperor like a physical blow. "They've been interbreeding with our population?" "More than that, sir. Some of these individuals are in our military command structure, our intelligence services, our technology development programs. If they've been feeding information back to Earth, then they know everything." Vex-High completed the thought, his voice hollow. "Every tactical doctrine, every technological advancement, every strategic plan. They've known it all from the beginning." The communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. Zarath activated it, and Secretary General Chen's familiar face appeared on the main screen. "Emperor Vex-High," Chen said with a respectful nod that somehow managed to convey both diplomacy and absolute confidence. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me." "I don't recall agreeing to anything," the Emperor replied, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "Perhaps agreeing was the wrong word," Chen acknowledged, "but you haven't refused, which we consider encouraging. Your Majesty, I want to be very clear about something. Humanity doesn't want to destroy the Valtorian Empire. You have a curious way of showing it. We've liberated enslaved populations and disabled military forces that were threatening innocent people. But we haven't destroyed a single Valtorian world, killed any Valtorian civilians, or even seriously damaged your industrial infrastructure. Emperor, if we wanted your empire destroyed, it would already be gone." The casual certainty in Chen's voice was more terrifying than any threat could have been. The humans weren't boasting or trying to intimidate, they were simply stating an observable fact. "What do you want?" Vex-High asked. "We want what we've always wanted, a galaxy where species can develop and thrive without fear of conquest. The Valtorian Empire has many positive qualities. Your people are natural explorers and engineers. Your society values courage and honor. Your technological innovations in faster-than-light travel have benefited every spacefaring species. But your practice of enslaving other races and expanding through military conquest threatens the stability we've worked to maintain for over 2 millennia. That's what needs to change." Another voice joined the communication, Dr. Martinez from the Solar Defense Initiative. "Emperor, we're not asking you to abandon your empire or your way of life. We're asking you to transition to a model based on voluntary association rather than forced submission." "You're asking us to release all our slave worlds," the Emperor said flatly. "We're asking you to offer them a choice," Chen replied. "Some may choose to remain as part of your empire as equal partners. Others may prefer independence. A few might even ask for human protection while they rebuild their societies." "And if we refuse?" "Then this conversation ends, and you'll continue watching your empire fragment as we support every liberation movement and resistance group in your territory." Admiral Jackson's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Your Majesty, you've seen what we can do when we choose to act. Imagine what we can do if you force us to commit our full resources to dismantling your empire." Emperor Vexhai looked at the holographic display showing his crumbling empire, then at Captain Zarath, who had witnessed firsthand the casual dismissal of Valtorian military might. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. It was an acknowledgement of reality. "What guarantee do we have that you won't simply destroy us once we've given up our military advantages?" "Your Majesty," Chen's voice carried genuine warmth for the first time, "humans have been secretly protecting Valtorian civilians from external threats for over 500 years. 3 separate extinction-level asteroid impacts were quietly deflected before they could reach Valtoria Prime. Twice, we provided medical assistance during plague outbreaks without revealing our involvement. When the Zeridian horde threatened your outer colonies 2 centuries ago, it was human intelligence that gave you advance warning of their approach." "We've never been your enemies," Dr. Martinez added. "We've been your guardians, protecting you from threats while trying to limit the harm you cause to others. All we're asking now is that you help us transition to a more sustainable model." The Emperor stared at the displays surrounding him. His fragmenting empire, the reports of human capabilities that defied everything he thought he knew about the galaxy, the faces of the humans who had just revealed that his species had been under their protection for longer than his empire had existed. "If we agree to these terms," he said finally, "what happens to the Valtorian Empire?" "It becomes something better," Chen replied. "A confederation of worlds that choose to work together. A society that builds through cooperation rather than conquest. A civilization that explores the galaxy as partners with others rather than as conquerors." "The humans will help with the transition," Admiral Jackson added. "We've done this before with other species. It's not easy, but it leads to stronger, more stable societies in the long run." Emperor Vexhai realized that he was witnessing the end of one era and the beginning of another. The age of conquest was ending, not because the conquerors had been defeated, but because they had encountered something beyond their understanding, a species that had turned survival into an art form and preparation into a philosophy. "Very well," he said, the words feeling strange but somehow right. "Let's discuss terms." As the communication continued, Zarath watched his emperor begin negotiations that would transform the Valtorian Empire forever. Outside the viewports, stars twinkled in the darkness, and for the first time in his career, he wondered what other secrets the galaxy might hold. How many species were out there, quietly watching and preparing? How many civilizations had learned, as humans had, that true strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to build? The universe, he realized, was far more complex and wonderful than any empire could hope to conquer. And perhaps, he thought as he listened to his emperor discuss peaceful transitions and voluntary associations, that was exactly as it should be. Our supporting vessels now drifted helplessly in space, completely at the mercy of the species they had come to enslave. But the humans didn't attack. Instead, they simply waited, their massive ships positioned as clear reminders of the power disparity that the Valtorians had completely miscalculated. "Your ships will be escorted to the edge of our system," Chen announced. "Once there, our technical teams will restore your essential systems and provide you with detailed navigation data for your return journey. Consider this a demonstration of human intentions. We could destroy you, but we choose not to." We hope your Emperor will remember that distinction. As human escort vessels moved into formation around his disabled fleet, Captain Zarath realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had just been revealed as elaborate fiction. The empire that he had served faithfully for his entire career wasn't the apex predator he had believed it to be. It was, at best, a regional power that had been allowed to exist because it hadn't yet threatened anything the humans truly cared about. That situation, he understood with crystal clarity, had just changed forever. All primitives playing with fire. The tactical display began showing new contacts appearing throughout the solar system. Ships were decloaking near the outer planets. Ships that definitely weren't in the original reconnaissance reports. What you didn't see, Chen's voice took on an almost sad quality, is that sometimes the weakest-looking species becomes that way because they've learned to survive in ways you never imagined. Sometimes what looks like division is actually the kind of diversity that breeds innovation, and sometimes what looks like primitive technology is just what we're willing to show to uninvited guests. The new contacts on the display weren't just ships, they were massive installations that had been hidden throughout the solar system. Asteroid mining stations that were clearly more than they appeared. Planetary defense networks that spanned from Mercury to Neptune. And emerging from Earth's own moon, weapons platforms that made Valtorian dreadnoughts look like toys. You wanted to know about human science, Chen said, as the moon-based installations began targeting the Valtorian fleet. Let us show you what happens when a species that knows it's physically weak decides to get really, really good at making tools.